Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah. And on today's episode, we are so excited to bring you an interview with author Amy Ratcliffe for her updated and expanded edition of the Star Wars Women of the Galaxy book out from Chronicle Books. We are seriously so excited to be talking to Amy today about this book because I loved the first edition of this book so much when it came out in 2018. And I know, Brad, you have a copy. I have a copy. It's been an awesome book to have in our collection. So the fact that an updated and expanded edition came out this year in April, we knew we just had to get Amy on the pod to talk about it, talk about all the new characters that are included, and just gush about how wonderful this book is.
Wow, 2018, Sarah, that's like 7 whole years of more Star Wars, and in particular, more Star Wars women.
That's right.
And if I may Saoirse Ronan in this moment, clap women.
Yes.
From Little
Yes,
Women,
yes.
one of my favorite films ever. Thank you, Greta Gerwig. But that's not what we're here to discuss. The galaxy far, far away is what we're discussing today. So enjoy the conversation. We get to all of our favorites, from the High Republic to Jedi Fallen Order, you name it. And without further ado, let's turn it over to our conversation with Amy Ratcliffe.
We are so glad to be joined by Amy Ratcliffe, author of Women of the Galaxy, and with the revised and expanded edition out this April. So it's been on shelves for a little while. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. It's been so long. And when we said hello, when I logged in, I was trying to think how long it had been, and I gave up. So this is overdue. Thank you for hanging out with me again.
Yes, we are really, really glad to have you back on the pod and glad to be talking with you about this book because, as I was saying just before we started recording, when this book initially came out in 2018, we were in such a moment, I think, for women in Star Wars, between like things like Forces of Destiny, the sequels, Battlefront 2. And so when I opened this book, both the original and the new revised let me get the wording right. Updated and expanded edition. I am brought back to that time, but I also, look through the lists of characters and look at all the additional characters that we have in this copy. And I am just so delighted by how many more women characters that we've been introduced to since then. So I just wanted to start with, how did this expanded edition come about and what was it like to return to this book?
So exciting. It was like really full circle. But this was the first book Star Wars One of the Galaxy was the first book I ever published, the first Star Wars book. So to get to come back to it this many years later, and I published other Star Wars books and Marvel, it's been really surreal and delightful. And it's something, 2018 it's wild to think about. That was before Disney Plus.
Oh my gosh.
So we didn't have any. So I think, once Mandalorian came out, that's about when people started asking, like, oh, when's there going to be an update? And I'm like, I could not tell you that. I hope one day. So I'm like, always, please ask Chronicle, ask Lucasfilm. And Mando came out in 2019. And we just had, like you said, so much, there's been so much Star Wars since then. And not just, of course, like Disney Plus, there's been the High Republic hadn't happened yet, Jedi Fallen Order, like all of those things. And so it was exciting to finally hear from Chronicle Books. And it was in progress for a little while, I would say, just because publishing takes a very long time, or it's either very long or very fast. And I don't feel like there's a lot of in between. And this one we talked about it. It went away for a while. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's not happening, like 2 different times. And to the point where by the time, it's really for real, I had to go back and update the list that I had given them because so much more had come out on Disney Plus. So it was a journey, but I'm glad. And then, of course, you release it and you're like, but Skeleton Crew. And they're like, no, it's always that, we have to cut it off somewhere. And I'm like, fine.
Right. The Star Wars never stops. So I look forward to the 2030 update as well.
Yes, please. Everybody buy this so we can keep updating it.
Absolutely.
I think it's so incredible, kind of to Sarah's point, it used to be a thing where it was like, we have the one woman in the Star Wars trilogy and the one woman in the prequels. And so to have the book in 2018, but then to come back and do an expanded version is just amazing. and it shows how much the galaxy is expanding, pun intended, right? So, what was the process of, all these characters that have come into our lives in the last 6 to 7 years, picking out which ones you want to include? Because I'm sure you couldn't include everybody that you would want to include. It's probably a hard process. There's some we probably wish were in here. There's some that we're super happy to see in here, but you got so many limited pages to work with.
All of those feelings. I will just say right now that I'm so sorry Marin is not in the book. I've heard about that. I agree. I'm sorry. I love her too. Just choices had to be made. And it was hard. And it was, I think, even more challenging when you're updating a book, right? Because Chronicle had to plan, okay, it's this many more pages. They're not just paying to hire me, they're paying to hire or pay to hire artists for new art or to license it. And then it's like fitting in, okay, if we're going to update Ahsoka, what kind of page count are we talking? How many words are we adding? Can we limit it so it doesn't mess up getting to whatever this gold number is where we have to cut it off just because, so there's like this science and math to it that I don't have to figure out, but I have to at least understand that when I give the list of like, how about I'll 25 to 30 of these? And they're like, how about that's cute? No. I can understand where they're coming from. So it was, I start big. I start with big dreams and just like list every character from, I kind of just went in order with the Disney Plus releases to get my footing. So from Mando to Boba Fett to Bad Batch to what else has happened since then? Acolyte, Andor, Ahsoka. And while I'm looking at new characters for consideration too, like whose stories have continued beyond when 2018 came out. Like, for example, like Rey needed an update because we hadn't seen Rise of Skywalker yet. Janna wasn't in there. Zori Bliss wasn't in there. And I feel like it's a little easier to grasp the on-screen stuff just because that's, I don't know, it's just a little more direct. And between comics and books, a lot's happened since 2018. So rather than kind of getting too overwhelmed, I try to focus on the High Republic from that part because that's kind of been the big initiative. It's so beloved by fans, and there are so many cool female characters in the High Republic. So the list I started with was long, and then it was not just like my character. It was like, okay, well, how many words is Maarva getting? How many updates? Like, how many words of an update? I was so thrilled to add more to Beru, for example, after Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan Kenobi happened.
Yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah.
So it was a delight, and also the list was long, and Chronicle and Lucasfilm were like, let's wait a second. And then Acolyte came out and they're like, let's add that back in. And then we're like, oh, but what about I think Star Wars Outlaws was like one of the last things that made it. So Kay was like I'm like, yes, Kay needs to be in here, but also as long as Nyx can be in the image. Here's like one of the most shameless things, by the way, I've ever done as an author. And I don't ask for things a lot, and it didn't work out, but I was like, I'll add Kay Vess if somebody gets me one of those Nyx plushes that I saw like influencers and creators and reporters got. I didn't get it, but I was like, I'm going to ask because that plush I love that little creature. Every time he does anything, that was the process. I got distracted by a cute Star Wars creature. That is my life. That is surprises no one.
We all do that, truly.
I really get it. I still, in the presence of a porg, lose my mind. Like, those are the lows of my life. So I understand. Like,
okay,
conversation.
I was just starting to be like, when you feed him, it's just precious.
Yeah, those little cutscenes at the food booths are. I just remember sitting there screenshotting everything and like video recording, and I'm just like, I'm gonna all the images. I need to save them all. They're so cute.
Just clapping from joy.
Yeah.
So yeah, made a big list, got cut down. And I think it did end up growing again, and much to my editor's chagrin, I think. Not because of the characters, but more because he was like, I had to plant. And we're like, but KVS. So we added somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 and did a lot of updates.
Yeah. So like, as you were talking about it, like there's a lot of logistics that go into this that maybe I didn't think of, before we started having this conversation, in terms of the word count, the ultimate page count, and making sure that everything kind of fits in its tidy little boxes at the end of the day. Can you talk about what your research process was like and what was most important to capture about each of the characters that you were both adding and that you were looking back into and updating?
Yeah, because this book kind of was like an elegant, well, it attempted an elegant tightrope walk as far as I wanted it to be informative. Like this is celebrating the characters. I think it's important to highlight big moments for them, whether it's an emotional thing or an accomplishment or something they survived or something they fought for. But it's not. We have Wikipedia, we have Star Wars Encyclopedia. Like it's not meant to be that, and it would be so much longer if it was. So especially, we all know I love Ahsoka, and kind of reflecting on what we learned about her since 2018, which, Tales of the Jedi also came out. So we got new information there. And then the Ahsoka series and her appearances in Mando and Boba Fett, as I'm questioning if she was in Boba Fett, but she was. What was that show? So many things happened in that show. I was like, was that Boba Fett? And it was.
That's the question we all ask ourselves. Was it the Boba Fett show or was it the Mandalorian?
What? Which one was it? That was such
Depends which episode.
It all comes together.
It does.
The synergy is synergying.
Real hard. And with questionable direction sometimes, but that's another tangent. And so it was like, okay, what are the key beats? That's kind of what I started at. Like what actual things happened, but more so what resonated with me as a fan about what happened. And that's kind of where I tried to start rather than and Ahsoka hung out with Luke and she didn't give Baby Yoda his name, but she was the first one to understand his name, like that's cool to me, like, and that's fun, but does this need to go in like my essay about her character? So those were kind of some of the things I considered with updates. And there was, with Ahsoka, with Rey, with Leia, there were a few where I got wordy, because it was also exciting to be like, this was a good reconnection with my Star Wars fandom. And I was just kind of excited to get back into the space where I'm just like gushing about these characters I admire so much. And because of like considering like the page counts and things in the room that we had, or, if we want to like put this in here, then we have to like move a piece of art or cut the quote that we have like popped out. So there were conversations like that where my editor kind of gently had to be like, do we need to include? And conversely, there were things like, Shin Hasi's a great example from Ahsoka season 1, who we don't know a ton about her character, right? Like her background's very mysterious. So I, just really lean hard. It's like, what vibes do I get from her? What is her personality? What speaks to me? And my editor would be like, well, what about this? Do we know this about her? Where is she coming from? I'm like, I don't. There were like 3 comments on like notes on her entry where I'm like, we do not know, sir. I don't have an answer for you. You just have to roll with my vibes.
It's like, if you would like to know, you maybe would want to email Dave Filoni. He maybe could answer that one for you.
I cannot.
Not me.
I cannot. And I don't think they would like if I just made some things up.
Definitely
well, hopefully, hopefully we'll get more information about her as the series continues. But that's why the 2030 update
needs to happen.
Have to happen, exactly.
Yes, stay tuned.
Yeah, like I keep hearing we didn't get this person in. Well, that's kind of a smart move on your part, honestly, because it sets you up for that what would it be called, the even more expanded and even more updated edition. Like, I'm buying it. Who's going on the cover?
Updated, expanded. No, I think that's the way to go. Even more, yeah. And just see how long we can get the subtitle to like stretch across the cover.
I would love that. And I vote KB from Skeleton Crew on the cover is all I'm saying. I think she would be
KB
awesome.
is so cool, and I wanted to put Fernan. Ugh.
Again? 2030?
Yes, it's gonna happen.
There.
Next
Chronicle
time
Books. Make it happen.
We're gonna manifest it all here, because I really would have 20 editions of this book. It'll be a whole shelf for me. I'm not even joking. It means a lot.
Yeah. I told my wife on the way home, I was like, we're interviewing Amy Ratcliffe tonight. And she's like, oh, I have the first edition and now I have the second edition. And we were so happy because we're just like, it keeps growing.
It keeps growing. So we keep getting more cool art.
I know.
Like, it's great.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. The artists in this book, by the way, I mean, incredible work. And I know that was one of the things that was so great about the first edition. and now getting even more people brought into the fold here. Some returning artists, I believe, as well, like Karen Hallion, I know, was a big one. So how did you go about selecting who was gonna contribute their art to this book and capture the essence of these characters so beautifully?
I wish I could say that I did anything in that regard, but I didn't. So I think what my editor kind of did is went back to I'm admiring um, the art and the artist in the back of the book. So he went back to, like you said, some of the folks we already worked with, Karen Hallion, Christina Chung, Sarah Alfaghi. There were just so many incredible ones. And then I think they also work with Lucasfilm for some art that they had, just recently had made. So what was delightful for me about that is once I finally, started to get proofs and we were going back and working on revisions, like the art was a surprise to me, as was the artist. And I remember when I announced it and Karen Hallion messaged me and she's like, "Oh, I'm doing art for the update." And I'm like, "You are? I love this is wonderful. This is excellent news." Because it's my favorite. And I genuinely mean this, and it sounds like I'm being flippant, but I genuinely encourage people, like, you don't have to read the writing. I will not be offended. I will, because buy it for the art. If nothing else, like if you appreciate Star Wars, you appreciate beautiful art, like it's so delightful to see all of these artists approach the characters with their own individual style, right? So it's not just, okay, this looks like every picture of Rey we've seen. It's individual. It's not like conforming to a model. Sorry, I just flipped to Lorna D's page by Annie Wu, and I'm like, look at this,
so
what a
good.
queen.
See, I'm on the Rey page, which I forget if this was in the first. I'm pretty sure this was in the first edition, but like this photo of her floating the rocks, it's just, yeah, it's such this book is such a centerpiece of beautiful Star Wars imagery that is so different every time you turn the page, and that's what's so lovely about it. And like credit to your words as well. Like I love that each entry is not just a Wikipedia dump of facts. Like it also has commentary in there. It has some behind the scenes kind of how the character came to be and what inspired those characters. And I really love those aspects, especially Daedra, who I think you threw in there something along the lines of, we admire her. She's like very admirable in her way that she is able to kind of work a room and overcome the inner ISB patriarchy, right? But also it's like we feel that conflict because she's doing something so amoral.
But she sucks.
So yeah. But like you include that level of nuance for that entry, which is like so lovely, and I love that.
Thank you. That's something I try to do, though I mean, very clearly a rebel through and through. When you're writing about these characters, I'm not going to ever understand someone who's like, I am all in on the Empire. But you try to find that, like, what can I connect? And I'm like, it's a weird thing, right? But I'm like, no, I do appreciate that you are in this room full of men and you're showing them all up. And what you want is really not something I agree with at all, but you are going for it. Fictionally, in real life, no. But if I'm writing about a fictional character and trying to like find a connection, she's really interesting.
Yeah, let's be very clear. We all hate fascists here.
Yes, fascists bad.
Very
bad.
But I think it's a testament to like Andor and just all of Star Wars that we care so deeply about these characters, despite whatever good or bad things they might do. It's just they're well written.
Yes.
And it's in a galaxy far, far away. Just happens to be there,
And I think like the beauty of fiction is that we get to explore the humanity of even the very worst people around, which I think can teach us a lesson about our own world and inform the world that we want to live in, and how we can create a better world. So having our villains, the people that we, even in our fiction, that we despise but can find some humanity in, and then also highlighting that in this book and having a range of women who are engaging with the world, the galaxy, in different ways, I think is really valuable for fans regardless of gender.
Right, because a gender is not a monolith, right? We all are different. We all there's nuance, there's range, and yeah, you're going to have your Leia Organas and your Padme Amidala's, but you're also going to have the Dedras. You're going to have Lorna D is a great one, but I think she's just like so like mustache twirling that she's such a delicious villain to like just that one hits a little different, I guess. But then you do have like Kay Vess, who's like I'm looking at her page right now because I wanted to see Nyx. Just sorry, Kay, Nyx is it.
All this K Vest talks is making me want to go play Outlaws immediately after this.
Yes,
so
good call. But I think that's a great character, interesting too, as far as like here's some different kind of shades of gray that we're looking at. So
yeah, totally. I would love to know when you first started writing this book, who immediately were you like, this is the first character I want to write about. I've been waiting so many years to write about this specific character. Like, who was in your top couple that were just go-tos and you were most excited about?
Omega. I don't know. I cannot remember when Bad Batch premiered at this point. So I don't know if it's been so many years, but she was top of mind. I think how that show ended and how her arc ended, and watching her. That was like, I know, like a back and forth I had with the editor, like of how I don't know where we landed. After I make edits, like I don't go back to see what stuck and what didn't, because life is short and you got to choose your battles. But I know Omega was a conversation because I wrote about just how she kind of went right from this kid who was, they were just constantly being like, you're a kid, you can't come on this mission. And every time she'd be like, I'm going to sneak in this mission and I'm totally going to save all of my space dads. And that happened like repeatedly. And then suddenly, not suddenly, many missions in, they're like, okay, we have accepted that you're part of this. And then she's such a key member. But the way I wrote it, my editor was like, that's too much of a jump. And I'm like, but that's what happened. It's not a jump. You have to watch the show. I get a little petulant. I'm just like, if you would just sit down and watch 3 seasons of Bad Batch right now, I'm giving him a hard time. My editor is wonderful. Omega, a newer one that was top of mind was Maarva Andor. I love Maarva for many reasons, including it's nice to see an older female character in Star Wars and have one who just, again, a different kind of personality. And I her speech, her posthumous speech in the Andor season 1 finale is just, or penultimate episode, whichever one that happened, it is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Maarva too, I love the quote, her life shows us that sometimes bravery requires time to develop, but it's always right there under the surface, waiting for us to grasp it. Which like really fit into some of the themes of the show, with like, Clem telling Cassian like, hey, they don't look below the rust, and kind of that idea that there's always something below the rust, below the surface, just waiting to kind of show itself. So I really love that. I wrote that one down. I was like, oh, I love Maarva so much.
Thank you. That makes me happy because I was like, this sounds in a way that I hope people who know me don't know that but I just, you forget, like you write things and you move on, you forget. And I'm like, hey, that actually is pretty good. Past Amy, good job. I didn't think I was like, are you sure? So those were 2. I'm flipping through. Oh, it was exciting to write about Jana too. But yeah, those 2 were top of mind. Omega and then Maarva were like, I'm like, yes, please. Yeah. Oh, and oh my gosh, Fennec Shand as well.
Oh yes, I miss Fennec, by the way. I where is Ming Na? Where is she?
Where is
I
she?
want her in my
like,
Star Wars again.
Always. I want her in my life
everything
again all the time. Yes. Yeah. I think she's a fascinating character as well.
Yeah.
I hope we continue to see more of her in the future, regardless of the medium, because she's just so great as a character, and there's so much there that we haven't seen yet. And
I know so much potential.
Were there any characters that, like when you were going to write the entry, you had put them on your list, but when you started to sit down and write about them, that surprised you or, inspired you in ways that you hadn't expected when you sat down to write them?
Yes, absolutely. And the one that comes to mind immediately is Avar Kriss. I think as I've read the High Republic, and there's just so many rich stories, but I know initially when I read it, I unfairly wrote her off as kind of a not very deep character. I was just like, oh, you're just kind of this like perfect not perfect, but you have like a very like blonde ideal um way about you, and that I'm just like, you're too good. You're too, which was very unfair. And she's more nuanced than that. I just, why did I have a beef with Avar Kriss? I don't know. But then in going back and researching and realizing how centered she is from the beginning. I mean, just like from the great hyperspace disaster, and kind of putting so much mental effort into protecting others. And I love that she sees the Force as music. I think kind of reflecting on that, that's something I really love about that era in general, is how different Jedi interact with, because that seems like that should be like a subjective thing to me, right? Not a, we all follow this code and interact with it in the same way. Um, so yeah, I just had written her off as being like a little like too noble, but she obviously gets more complex over the series, and has doubts, and um really like goes so hard against Lorna D. And there's like question there about like conflict over, I'm like feeling very non-Jedi ways about what I want to do to this Twi'lek. Um and we see her grow, but I don't think I gave her that same grace when I was reading the High Republic. So to go back and research her, I found just more of a connection and appreciation for her.
Yeah, and I'm so curious to, now that, the High Republic is ending, or the, Trials of the Jedi is coming out soon, like where she'll be, I
Yeah.
want only good things for her and for
Yes.
Elzar, and I feel like they've been through so much. Them, I mean, everybody in the High Republic, but also them
Yes.
specifically. Um, so let's wish good things for
Put that
Avar
into the
Kriss.
galaxy, please. And
Yeah.
who's yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I
Was
I was gonna
really.
like, who am I gonna have to talk to?
Well, I think Mike
Just,
Seglain is
I'll
who you
get
have to talk
ready.
to. Send
Okay,
Mike
great.
Seglain an email.
Charles
Charles,
Soule,
yeah. Just
hello.
copy
I'm
him
ready.
also, whoever
I'm
you want.
ready. I'll just write them all and just be like,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Send them a postcard. That's when they know you mean business, is when it comes in the form of a physical letter.
Handwritten.
I do love in the Avar section too, one cannot let themselves be consumed by guilt over not being able to prevent every evil. And I read that sentence, and you actually kind of recontextualized Avar for me a little bit, because I always thought of Elzar as the most obvious Anakin comp. But when I read that sentence for Avar, I was like, wait, Avar is also kind of a bit of an Anakin comp as well. And because Anakin is also, not that he's trying to prevent every evil, but trying to prevent every like death or
He's coming from a place of, you're like, okay, see you.
yeah, like deep care for other human beings. And I think being the Marshal of Starlight is pretty equal to being the chosen one, right? And I think Anakin never had his Elzar, right? It was
Right.
kind of like Padme in a way, but it was sort of an unhealthy obsession, and I feel like he lacked that emotional support that Elzar provides to Avar, and that kind of mutual assurance and mutual understanding. So
Yeah, like that grounding, right? That's not quite. And I think, to your point, like, I don't think Obi-Wan, I think about Obi-Wan not infrequently, and especially in regards to like how he's fulfilling Qui-Gon's death wish. Like, in no way was he ready to have Padawan, and certainly I don't think one like Anakin, and he would just did his best, but I don't think he was grounded enough to even Anakin out in the same way that Elzar does with Avar.
mm-hmm, totally, we love our High Republic so much. So happy to see these included.
Is there a particular entry that, when you look back at, or you just think about the work that you've done across these two editions of the book, that you are most proud of, that you think back and go, that was pretty decent of me, actually?
Well, now that you quoted that Maarva line to me, I'm like, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, gosh, I'm not just gonna say Ahsoka.
You can, though, if
I
you want
can.
to.
You know what I no, what I will say is Ray. Because, and I will say that because I was oh gosh, Omega, I love her. What a distracting book this is. Goodness, the art. Um, with Ray, I was so happy with both The Last Jedi and particularly how I got to end that essay, and I thought was very powerful in the original edition to talk about how she was Rey Nobody, and just from the perspective of like any of us could be Rey and put ourselves in those shoes, and um, that felt so right to me and so connected with what we saw of her character, and that changed with the Rise of Skywalker. But what I was able to kind of think about is still like she what spun that for me is she chose her family. She chose her to claim the name Skywalker. And I think there's power in that too. And that she still, to her mind, she still was a nobody, like to herself, for however many years. And anyways, what I'm trying to say is I wasn't thrilled about changing that part because that meant so much personally to me for her to just be Rey from anywhere and from whatever family. But I feel like I found a bridge that I felt good about and that made me like more accepting of that change and made me realize how much she owned her power by deciding like this is the path that I am going on, this is the name that I am taking, this is a legacy I will continue to go forth with in the galaxy. And that is hugely important too. And she still, came to that and grew up into that from being an orphan on Jakku, who is licking her dinner plates by her her kind of put together home. And I think it was beautiful for her to understand that her relationship to Palpatine and to someone who had that profound of an evil influence on the galaxy like did not define her, even once she knew that, and what she was before she realized she was a Palpatine. Like that's what she carried with her and defined her self with going forward. If any of that made sense, I am not sure.
No, yeah,
No,
it definitely
it
did. Yeah, yeah. And I think, like Sarah and I, we feel conflicted over some story aspects, certainly once or twice in our day. But I think the cool thing about what you're speaking to is that when you really engage with Star Wars, even the parts that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, if you really deeply engage with them and try to make sense of them and come to terms with them in some way, like you can see some of those silver linings and like kind of connective tissues to the things that you do love. One line I always come back to from that movie is the greatest oh gosh, Sarah, you might have to quote me here, but the destiny of a Jedi is to confront fear, which Luke tells Rey. So, and at first I couldn't quite make sense of that, but now in the High Republic era, like I've kind of recontextualized that quote entirely with like, what do the Jedi fear? And the whole idea of the High Republic is to overcome fear. So it's so cool that when you revisit some of those things and maybe give it some time and some distance, you can kind of come back to it and look at it in a new way.
Right. Like, okay, I didn't appreciate that before or see it before. And so much of, when we watch things or experience things is also informed by like, where are we in that particular time of our lives? What are our expectations at that moment? So time and perspective can certainly help. Or not sometimes, but they can.
Yeah, truly. 2020 was not a good year to sit and stew with a movie you didn't like. I can speak for myself.
It's true. Same.
Not a great year.
Uh-huh.
But I think also the beautiful thing about looking back at, the Rise of Skywalker and how maybe Rey's story shifted in that movie and what you speak to in your entry and is that Star Wars is a beautiful thing too, where the story continues. The story is never truly over. We might know where a character ends, and then 10 years later we find out a new section of their life that tells us something completely new about them, or allows us to think differently about the character that we thought we knew. And so even just beyond looking back at a moment and thinking about it differently, we also have the ability to like, in 5-10 years from now, if the new Rey movie that has been discussed is in the world at that time, then we get to think about Rey with even more added context, even a larger portion of her life. And it's things like that on the one hand, while I may be like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that, I look forward to you know, the ability to think about her again
right?
in a different
Yeah.
way and in a different part of her life. And I think that's what this update of this book gets to do too, is think about these characters who have had more moments in time in the galaxy, and just rethink about them. And I love that this book approaches these characters, and you write about them both. It's not clinical, you know. It has a lot of heart, and there's this this warm fan feeling to it, which I really appreciate about this book. So thanks for doing an update.
Thank you. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy, because that's my intent. Because as you were talking, you know, just about characters that we've seen so much more of, I think, like, I went so hard on Mon Mothma before Andor, and to have like had season 1 of Andor, I mean, now we have season 2, so again in 2030, but to just kind of learn like characters like that, to have our eyes opened even more about the cost that they paid and the things that they balanced, or maybe looked down on, but had to like come to terms with being part of their path. Like, it just, there's a lot of fan feeling in it, so I'm glad that comes through.
Star Wars is a tapestry, and I'll say it again, 2030. Get that updated Rey entry with the Rey movie. You could talk about how she just hates Ryan Gosling's character because he is super clumsy and annoying.
Yeah, I want him to be Ken in Star Wars, and I would not be even a little bit sad about that.
Yeah, he's just Ken, and he's very happy if Rey pays attention to him at least once in the day.
But yes.
And Rey wants nothing to do with it. I need to see that dynamic. Assuming she's in the movie, which it seems like maybe, but who knows? But we'll see. Time will tell. I want to ask you a fun hypothetical question. So you have a lot of characters in this book, and this is kind of in the spirit of what we ask a lot of authors on the podcast. If you could take any 2 characters from this book who don't speak in Star Wars
to each other,
any of the women to each other, never one time. So you can't do like, you know, Maarva and Bix. Which 2 characters would you choose to have a conversation, and what do you think they would talk about?
This is such a good question. I thought this was going to lead to, what 2 characters have you never met that you would have kiss? Because that's generally, my default.
You can also provide that answer as well.
I'll
if you have a thought.
I don't off the top of my head. That's just, I'm like, what if everybody kissed? I'm flipping
the correct
through my
answer
book.
is actually Shin Hati and Sabine, but you know.
Oh, but actually, yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
I'm on board. You answered it. You did it. Okay. Wow, there are too many characters. Okay, this is what we're going to start with. Enfys Nest, because I want more of Enfys Nest. Tragedy that there has not been more since Solo: A Star Wars Story. And Dedra. That's recency bias talking, but I stand by it. I think having a showdown between Enfys Nest, so defiant, so kind of like not a Dedra of her world, right? But like this young, ambitious, because she's had to be like leading her people in this nascent stage of like what is like becoming the rebellion, up against like Dedra, like trying to question her or trying to push her and get information about like the pieces of the network that Enfys knows or that she operates. Like, I think that would be a really good game of chess. And I think Dedra would severely underestimate Enfys because of her age.
I really like that answer, because like she talks to Luthen, and Luthen's really the king of all chess players. Like, he is the top.
Yes.
Of the top. He's like
that scene was
top
so
chess
good.
player in the world. But like, what does Dedra do when she is talking to somebody who's really in the muck of the fight? Because Enfys is like kind of part of the partisan group in a way, or maybe like a splinter of the partisans, you know?
Exactly. And I see like Luthen as more of, I mean, Clay really is more of the conductor, but Luthen is kind of like willing to get in it, but also like not middle management, but you know what I mean. I would not, Luthen is much better than that.
Like the liaison between everybody.
Thank you. Yes.
Luthen's the executive, and then Clay is the one who does all the work, and then he just gives the sign off, yes or no. To put it in corporate terms, can you tell I'm having a great week at work?
Oh, great. That was very corporate. And if you could just like figure out how to work the way learning's in there,
Sure. Yeah.
which is one of my least favorite business corporate words.
Yeah.
You know,
We'll circle back,
circle
and
back.
then we'll take it,
I knew it.
and then we'll
Well,
and then we'll take the ball
reline?
down the field. So
Oh, yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I also think that a conversation between Dedra and Emphas would be really interesting, because thinking about Dedra's positioning within Star Wars, she is in the Empire, which is so male dominated and patriarchal, and like the only, I mean, we see her interact with Bix in the first season, where, you know, she's briefly before Gorst comes in, and then we see her interact with Edie briefly. But what other women does she have in her life? How often is she interacting with other women characters? And so I think it would be interesting not only for her to be interrogating, you know, somebody much younger, or somebody who's really in control, but just a young woman specifically. I wonder if she would see that ambition in her and see herself in a particular way.
I think that, yeah, same, all those feelings. And also, while you were talking, I remembered that Edie was one who did not make it, and that makes me sad. 2030.
2030. We'll just keep saying that. That's the inside joke. So listeners,
what's happening in 2030?
Yeah, see Amy on Twitter or on Blue Sky or wherever she's at now. Just add her and say 2030. You know. Selfishly, I want to throw one out there. I would love to see Seer Junda and Vernestra Rowe talk. I think that would be really interesting. I think that would be a conversation of all conversations.
Yes, I would be whatever a Star Wars fly is called on that wall.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a fly in Star Wars. I'm not sure. But
so for readers who are going to pick up this updated and expanded version, maybe for the first time, maybe they didn't have the original version, what do you hope that a reader takes away from this book?
I hope that a reader is seen and feels seen by one of the characters. I think that is certainly the case when I wrote it in 2018, but even more so now, where there is such a variety of characters. You know, one of my favorites from the first edition is still a favorite, is Durla Paitis, who's like incredible space businesswoman sommelier, and you know, has appeared in a short story in a book, but I felt very strongly, I'm like, please give me this one. So I hope that when you flip through these pages and you learn about it, just like the many kinds of characters and their choices and the actions that they take, that you feel seen, and I hope that you find someone who inspires you in whatever way that is, because I think we see women who do, you know, what might seem like the smallest things, right? Record a speech that gets played on Ferrix after they die and instigates a riot and catalyzes how many people to join the rebellion against the Empire. Of course, women like Mon Mothma and Leia and Padme, who are public servants, who are very actively involved. But there's beauty in the space sommelier, like doing her business and making her own place in the galaxy. And I think all of those things are valid, and all of them can be inspiring, and you can take that inspiration and transmute it into something so unique to you and what you're interested in, and the ways that you want to use your voice. And that was a ramble, but I hope that that's what readers, they feel seen and they feel inspired.
Absolutely. And I would say that that's a success for me, but I also did caveat that, like, I did have the 2018 version. So I've already been feeling that way. But yeah. So this update is awesome, and the original book is awesome too. And I hope readers, if they haven't picked up either one of them, pick up both of them right now. Yeah, that's my plug as a fan.
Thank you.
So,
well, Amy, we're coming to the end here. So before I ask you, I guess this can kind of be combined. Where can our listeners find you? What do you have going on? And can you tell us a little bit about Thrill Ride, which is your newest book, which romance, we love it.
Yes.
We love it here.
I mean,
we want to hear all about it.
Again, my default is wanting everyone to kiss. So people can find me on Instagram is social media where I am most active at Amy_geek, and my newsletter, which is amyratcliffe.substack.com. I send that out once a month. I am working on a few things. The one in which I can talk about right now is the follow-up to Thrill Ride, which is due later this summer, which is exciting. And Thrill Ride, as you mentioned, is a romance. It's my first full fiction debut. It's a small town romance, Grumpy Sunshine, for those of you who partake in romance and know the tropes, about a character who is a theme park designer who gets laid off from her Imagineering-esque job and goes to help save her family's theme park, and has to work with an investor who has never been on a roller coaster, but is also super hot. So it's a thing about romance. There are no spoilers because there's a happy ending. So I love it. It's just safe and it's nice, and I like pleasant things. And so it is their story about Charlotte and Gregory, and it's filled with all my Disney adult nerdness I could put in there. And it's full of Easter eggs if you like theme parks. And if you don't like theme parks, or if you are really curious about them, I hope it just is a fun thrill for you. That was awful. I'm so sorry.
That was brilliant. No,
honestly, 10 out of 10 dad joke. I love that.
Yeah.
But really, like, full circle, because last time, and one of the last times you were on here, we were talking about the art of Galaxy's Edge. Now we're here talking about the thrill ride, the theme park of it all. Like, romance now.
I love it.
You're really doing everything we all want to do.
I'm trying to do everything that brings me joy, which is like, what if I made up a theme park that is not real and put a lot of thought into it and did Imagineerings, like little Imagineering in a box for children to build this theme park that you see like 35% of in the book, but it's all out there. It's all on paper. So was this book just an excuse for me to design a theme park? Maybe.
See, I think you're just living my Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 dreams.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I love it.
Oh my
gosh,
I haven't played that game in so long.
I think we just found out your Thursday and Friday night plans, which is to play Roller Coaster Tycoon.
I'm here for the assignment.
Perfect. Well, Amy, thank you so much. We can't wait to see all the great things you continue to do, whether they're in or out of the Star Wars universe. Thank you for coming back and talking with us. You've been the best. And for all of you listening,
you're the best.
No, you're the best. But may the Force be with you, and may the Force be with all of our listeners. Thank you again. Thank you all once again for listening to this episode of Friends of the Force, and a huge thank you to Amy Ratcliffe for joining us. As a reminder, Women of the Galaxy, the updated and expanded edition, as well as Thrill Ride, is now on bookshelf, so go pick those up if you have a chance. And to hear more from us in the coming weeks, especially if you're an Andor or High Republic fan, follow us on all of our socials, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, as well as all of our podcast feeds, wherever you listen. Subscribe to the show, leave us a review if you enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for more.
And also a huge thank you to all of our patrons. Our Patreon helps us keep the lights on, and tiers start at just $1, and we're super grateful. So thank you to Abigail, Andy, Ben, Brian, Cheryl, Clay, Emma, Ian, Jen, Josephine, Jules, Katie, Knights of Ren, Logan, Lucy, Lindsay, Matthew, Nicole, Rob, Ruth, Santa, Skytalker, Soulcatcher, Travis, and Beeglyph. We are so grateful for all your support. I hope you're staying happy, healthy, and hydrated. There's lots going on in the world. Please take care of yourself.
Happy, healthy, hydrated, the 3 sacred H's. I love that, Sarah. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.